Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of RSBANB Update Supplemental. I am Shane12088 on RS, and now just a bit of a reminder as to what RSBANB Update Supplemental is. This serves primarily as an accompaniment to upcoming or past RSBANB Update episodes, in which we can offer a bit of extra discussion pertaining to a various game aspect, whether that be a technical digest of something, or player opinion, or just something that needs a bit more focus that can easily be done in a separate medium, but also stands well on its own. And that's what today's episode is likely going to be. And this episode is appropriately entitled, What is a Beta? And that's because we want to ensure that this combat beta that Jagex is currently running turns out properly. We want to make sure that we have an end product that everybody is happy with, and something that is actually going to benefit to the future of the game, and not so that it needs to be redesigned in another 18 months' time. So, without further ado, let's just remember that this is to do with the Combat 2014 beta. Legacy combat testing will happen at a later date. So for now, we're just going to ignore the potential of that happening and focus on the combat beta. So the first thing that I'd like to mention to everybody is a bit of a backgrounder as to what exactly a beta test is. There's lots of different perceptions out there, and they can be carried out in a huge variety of ways. But traditionally, it's meant to be used on software that is feature complete, but still has bugs to be ironed out, or needs some polish around the edges. And that's what we've seen in the past, and is kind of what Jagex is attempting to happen with the combat beta, but not entirely. I'll get to that in a little bit. Beta tests can also be internal, external testing with non-disclosure agreements, or completely public, as we see here. Now, each one of these has their own benefits and drawbacks. Some of them to think of specifically with regarding of internal testing is you have specific testers only, so you can bring in certain people. Let's say you want to bring in a very specific subset of your user base. That's great, but at the same time, it leaves a whole bunch of people out in the cold with regards to testing. Testers are likely to know what they're doing, seeing as they're handpicked and are going to receive a bit of a tutorial coming in to ensure they're testing properly. And you're also going to get better feedback from this, because not only can you tell the people how to test and where to test, but you can reward them with material values to ensure that the test will actually be carried out in a proper way. One of the real downsides of this sort of testing comes from that, with it being a specific user base that you're testing for, it's only possible to test the server or product under very low load conditions. So that's one area where, in addition to the previous two, that internal testing can be bad. External testing, bringing in people and allowing people to test with a non-disclosure agreement, gives you a larger test base. These testers are likely to be engaged, as seeing they're legally forbidden from talking about the beta test with other people, meaning that you would face legal consequences if you spill the beans as to what's going on with the beta. As with internal testing, this can once again be targeted to specific groups, but seeing as you're casting the net out to the public, you do have the ability to bring in other groups as well with this. So it is a little bit better in terms of getting a wider sample set of the user base than just bringing in people to test it internally. This testing is often done when the need for a wide variety of configurations is apparent. So let's say you're testing on Mac, Linux, and Windows hardware, and each of those has a different operating system. You can specifically target that. It's easier to do that kind of testing with a targeted test with fewer participants than it would be to just completely open the test up to the public, which is what the next type of test is that I want to mention. Public testing is open to everyone. People view this as good, but the real downside of this is if it's not managed correctly, it creates lots of noise. Noise in the sense that there's bug reports coming in that might not be bug reports. There's feature requests coming in that might not be completely related to the beta that's currently being tested. You get the idea. It's kind of like what happened with this combat beta, and people started focusing on other areas that they'd like to see rather than just what was in game. Granted, they were allowed to submit suggestions, but the forum was overrun with suggestions about stuff that was not in the beta. So that's one of the downsides of public testing, but unfortunately, it's not avoidable. And one of the real good things about public testing is that it can iron out the edge cases. Seeing as you have practically everybody looking at this pre-release code, you're going to get people who are going to break it. I mean, an example in RuneScape might be trying to use a special attack on a tree. Well, what could happen there? Maybe that'll crash the client or something. That's a bug that you want to iron out. So these are the kind of edge cases that a larger player base in public testing will hammer out. It's best utilized on something that's nearly complete and is actually usable in terms of stability. Now, the important thing to remember with the combat beta is that we don't know where we are in terms of completion. We could be weeks away, we could be a couple months away. It totally depends. So whether or not that's a good idea to bring public testing out this soon with this, I don't know. And it's also good for giving users a taste of what's to come and preparing them for upcoming change. So that is one of the things that Jagex likes to do with their betas. So that being said, let's have a look at Jagex's beta history. First things first, Jagex ran a beta for RuneScape 2 in 2004. There was another one for High Detail in 2008, and then they pretty much went quiet until 2012's Evolution of Combat beta, and then 2013 we had two betas with RS3 and the HTML5 beta. Now both of these were open to Premier Club members, meaning you just had to purchase into them. Now in 2014, betas are open to everyone, even free-to-play. Now, this presents its own issues, so I'm just going to offer everybody a word of caution. Now, if you've been kind of paying attention up until this point, this is the point in which you want to refine your focus greatly. So, open betas are great. They allow us to see what's coming and prepare for it. While doing this, we also help Jagex out in terms of their bug testing, which is great because, I've played other games, and RuneScape is one of the games out there that has fewer bugs in the main game than other games. So that's good. Now, we just need to look back a little bit to the Evolution of Combat beta in 2012. That beta was too open. Almost everyone was invited. Everyone, including every family member, I guess that would be a good analogy to use here of theirs. This was not healthy for the beta, that amount of players coming into an early system that was being heavily refined, because everybody who is Premier Club could get it. And as I said, that's not the best way of testing out something that is completely changing the way the game works. Players with no experience of testing were permitted on board and didn't exactly provide constructive criticism. Most of the criticism that came was just ranting and flaming pertaining to this, and it was hard, very hard to find criticism that was actually tailored and pointed to what we saw in game. So, what happened with this? Well, that criticism ballooned. It kept getting bigger and bigger until it was uncontrollable, and that led to a negative perception around the community surrounding the Evolution of Combat. Now, this could have been prevented with a more tightly controlled beta, at least in the beginning. I mean, you don't need to keep a beta tightly controlled all the way through, but at least in the beginning, this should have been tightly controlled. It should have involved non-disclosure agreements. If you talk about this with your friends, if you post pictures of this, your account is going to get banned. That could have been Jagex's form of non-disclosure agreement. Stakeholders could have included everyone. They could have evenly sampled the combat formula. The combat base. Getting ahead of myself. All combat levels, all combat types, all character types. Peers would have been included. Skillers would have been included. Maxed players would have been included. Ranged mage hybrid type people would have been included as well. Basically, what I'm saying is that rather than allowing the entire public in who purchased Premier Club and then 2 or 3 weeks later open it up to the entire membership base was a bad idea. Just focus on creating internally, inviting people who represent a diverse cross-section of what combat looks like. We would have ended up with a product that Jagex is trying to create now. It would have been better from the very beginning. And we could have avoided these past 18 months of splintering the community through various attempts of, losing people from the game, creating old school, and now going all the way back and creating legacy mode. So I'm really wanting to stress that with this beta, we need to play this beta, test it, and offer constructive criticism. Because if that's not done, we are going to end up with a situation similar to before. We have the ability to shape the future of combat once again, what combat will look like going forward. If there's something that doesn't work properly, bring attention to it. If there's something that doesn't feel right, highlight it. But remember to do this in a critical, constructive fashion, not in a rant. Not in a rant. The amount of people on the beta servers is drastically lower than the people that participate on the forums, and that's something that needs to change. People need to get on the beta servers and actually play. Polls just appeared today in the beta, and it's really time to start dedicating some time to this. The poll numbers are very, very low. Triple digits, single digits for some options. It shouldn't be that way. There should be a wider variety of people voting in those polls. Granted, they've only been up for 12 hours, but people do need to get in there and vote in those and test. Test the beta servers. Share this video with your friends. Tell people on the forums. Tell them about the video to ensure that combat can be fixed once and for all. And if you do this, we will end up with a healthier game in the future. Finally, remember, RSBANB update is recorded on Fridays. That's today. And the published version will be posted on Saturday. We'll be talking a bit about the beta changes, specifically the polls and what the numbers look like. But this is mainly an aside to talk about what a combat beta should be. So remember to listen to RSBANB update, the main show, on the weekends. And until then, we'll be back next week, hopefully with another supplemental.